I'm with Ami Horowitz, and we're looking at the key moments out of the State of the Union address. And let's look at this moment, which I think for a lot of people will be one of the most memorable.
One of the great things about the State of the Union is how it gives Americans the chance to see clearly what their representatives really believe. So tonight I'm inviting every legislator to join with my administration in reaffirming a fundamental principle. If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. The first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. Isn't that a shame? You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Ami, you talked about President Trump setting traps and the Democrats falling into them. That was a very obvious one. How do you not stand up for a statement as obvious as the duty of the American government is to protect American citizens?
Honestly, because I'm not sure they believe it. I got to be honest. I mean, that's kind of the core of the problem of the Democratic Party, right? Like, they're standing up for illegals. They're literally having people protect criminal illegals, never mind regular illegals, criminal illegal aliens across these blue cities where they're not. This is where the whole problem stems from, where they're not allowing ICE to go into prisons to get illegals who are committed crimes. Right? That's the whole problem with the Democratic Party. Now I'll say this: what he did a masterful job. Forget the trap. That obviously he did. But we talked about this. He was able to reframe the immigration debate with that. Okay. What I mean by that is he closed the borders. Right. No one's coming in. He's winning the immigration debate. Then he has the problem, this optics problem of going into like Home Depots and in Minneapolis and the shootings. And now there was a problem. He was losing the U.S. people, and the last poll done was showing that the Republican Party, which was their strength on immigration, it was President Trump's strength, was now underwater on who do you trust to handle immigration. And what he did by this was he brought it back to his strength and say, look, we are here to close the borders. We are here for an America to service Americans and not illegals, and the Democrats just could not do it. They had to have an own goal and sit on their hands with that most obvious statement, right? It was an obvious trap. They still walked into it because, like I said, it's kind of the ethos of the Democratic Party.
How you don't stand up for that in an election year? We've got the midterms coming up. Yeah, I mean, you could just play that footage in an election ad and say, these are the Democrats. They don't think their first duty is to protect American citizens. But the most disgraceful moment for me was when President Trump was talking about Iryna Zarutska. Her parents were there, her grieving parents, and he paid tribute to her, and the Democrats couldn't even stand for the grieving parents of this young woman.
Last summer, 23-year-old Iryna was riding home on the train when a deranged monster who had been arrested over a dozen times and was released through no cash bail stood up and viciously slashed a knife through her neck and body. No one will ever forget. There were people on that train. No one will ever forget the expression of terror on Iryna's face as she looked up at her attacker in the last seconds of her life. She died instantly. She had escaped a brutal war only to be slain by a hardened criminal, set free to kill in America, came in through open borders. Mrs. Zarutska, tonight I promise you we will ensure justice for your magnificent daughter, Iryna. How do you not stand? How do you not stand?
I've got to repeat what the president said. How do they not stand for that? How do they not stand up for a grieving mother when the president's paying tribute to her daughter? I just don't get that. What political advantage is there in that?
And if you notice the Erika Kirk on the side, the empathy from Erika Kirk for this poor woman after her husband was murdered. She said, you can see her mouth her words, bless you, caring for this woman after she's there grieving for her husband. It's confounding. It truly is. And that wasn't meant to. I don't think that was meant to be a trap at all. I think that was just him acknowledging this woman. Look, you and I have talked about it. The incredible turnaround on crime in 2026, particularly in Washington, D.C., but really around the country, has been unbelievable. We haven't seen a drop like that in decades. And look, I remember that. We all remember that moment where her daughter was murdered in the most heinous way. A guy who was let out of jail a number of times to commit this crime. Should have been
behind bars.
Should have been behind bars.
He should have been behind bars.